Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Rules of Engagement. As always, I'll be your host, Nick, axslav, ranish, as we take a look at some strategies and tactics used in the game of Starcraft 2. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of games from the Challenger Group F that you saw earlier this week. First, we take a look at a Chargelot Archon style of PvT in Xenocider versus top. Then how mobility, units with high mobility versus a very powerful army interact with each other in PvP and minigun versus state. And then fast expanding in PvP in top versus state. After these three segments will be the viewer Q&A, so submit any questions you have to me on Twitter at @axslav, also under YouTube comments in www.youtube.com/official MLGSC2, finding the more recent Rules of Engagement videos, leave comments there, and I'll answer them at the end of the next episode. So our first segment is going to be Chargelot Archon in PvT. And first we'll talk about the different Chargelot Archon timings and when it's strong and the purpose of this combination. Then we'll talk about how to make a comeback in Protoss vs Terran. And then also in Terran vs Protoss, if you're ahead, the way to play to make sure that you don't end up giving away that advantage. Start this replay off at the 3:30 mark. And the first thing I'm going to point out isn't having to do with Chargelot Archon, but it's a cool thing about Terran vs Protoss. So if the Protoss player skips the Zealot, they don't build the Zealot their first gateway, the Terran player, a great way to really get a good advantage against Protoss who does this is to go ahead and build an engineering bay on their natural. And the reason why this is so good if they skip the Zealot is because, the Zealot not only would be out now and you could stop that SCV from mostly finishing the engineering bay, but also the Zealot actually does a lot of damage per second against something that can't run away from it. So it's the most effective unit at taking down the engineering bay as opposed to the Stalker or the Mothership Core, which are a little bit less damage output. And what makes this even stronger is, so right now top, he's busy dealing with the Reaper. The engineering bay is still not even being attacked because the Reaper, the Stalker has to be distracted, keeping the Reaper back. Now, when he does find the E-bays there from top's viewpoint, right about now he sees E-bay. Now I realize it's okay. I want to be starting my Nexus right about now at the 440 mark, but unfortunately I can't do it. So he has to go work on this E-bay. Stalker has to come back, Mothership has to join the fight. And then, of course, if the Reaper can pop back in the main, all of a sudden, he has to send the Stalker to deal with that. The engineering base stays alive for even longer. And so this Reaper eBay block combination is so powerful. You can see here, if you want to start the Nexus at the 440 mark, it's going to be 540 mark when the Nexus starts. So it delays the Nexus by a full minute. And the big effect of that is just he can't mine from these patches. And if you look at this, he's already in a situation where he's very close to the saturation point on this Nexus right now. So all these probes he's building right now, they want to be mining from the natural. And he's a minute behind. So right now the natural should be, it would be done ideally right now. At this point it would be finished. But unfortunately, because it's not finished, all these probes have to do this long distance mining for the next minute. So he's losing a lot of potential economy just from the E-Day block. So the Protoss player, make sure to not let that happen by getting the Zealot. And then if you see they're not E-Bay blocking, you can cancel that Zealot when it's 90% done to get that money back, so you can then invest in a Nexus or a Stalker or whatever. But go ahead and start that Zealot and then scout to see if they eBay block you, and you can reactively cancel that or not cancel depending on how the Terran is open. So both players going to macro up for the next few minutes. Easy double upgrades here at the Forges, trying to get a jump on upgrades. Terran, of course, is playing a pretty standard opening as well, just a bunch of barracks and then going up to Starboard. We're just going to jump up a few minutes in the game because not too much happens. Both players macroing. And I'll talk about the Chargelot Archon composition in Protoss versus Terran. So some drop play trying but being deflected there. No one's lost too many units, you know, a couple little annoying skirmishes around the map, but nothing too big. Now, as we see here, the unit composition of top, it's pretty much all Chargelots and Archons. He's getting 2-2 upgrades. He already has Charge done. Structures tab shows he has 8 Warp Gates done. And he's even adding in 2 more, so he's going to be up to like 10 Warp Gates. Yeah, he's going to have a ton of Warp Gates. Insane amount of production so you can spend all that money. And the power of this combination, this is a great build to do, especially on the ladder. If your opponent tries to fight you at this point in the game, right at this point in the game, or about 20 seconds from now, even right now, even with equal upgrades, in the open with these small army sizes where there's only 4 medevacs out, your opponent doesn't have a lot of units, if they try to fight you, they're going to be soldered. And if you can pick off some rally units with charge, you can run them down, catch all these units off guard. All of a sudden you get a lot of free kills. If Terran tries to fight you in the open at this point in the game, they're not going to beat you. Unless they significantly out-macroed you with just a simple A move, you're going to have so many charge shots and overwhelm them because of the production advantage you have with Warp Gates. Now that's the strength of Chargelot Archon. as you're much stronger in opening. Your opponent has to back up behind walls to defend. And then, of course, that means you can usually deny a third base of them. So you should not really let this happen. But the disadvantage is it's very weak in fighting in chokes. So as a Terran opponent, don't fight the Chargelots into open. Wait for the choke point and fight them in choke point. As you can see here, how many Chargelots are there? 24, 27 Chargelots in this composition, right? But how many can actually fight at once in this battle? I mean, if you take a look at this, there's only a couple Chargelots at a time. This Hellbat each Hellbat is hitting so many Zealots with every single attack. The ones in the back here are even be able to stay alive. It's an absolute slaughterhouse, right? I mean, the Protoss is getting annihilated here because Chargelots are amazing in the open, in a confined environment where they can't really get those connections going. They're not quite as good. So as a Terran player against Chargelot Archon, play defensively. As a Protoss player, push the Terran back, take map control, deny the third base, but don't try to charge into a choke point. If you have Storm, you can do that because then you can Storm to push them out of that choke point. But if you just have Chargelots and Archons, avoid fighting in those confined spaces. They're really best in open. Now the situation where Terran is significantly ahead, right? If you take a look at economy, Terran's ahead in that because he's got the third base. He's got a couple extra workers because Protoss was going for that 2-base timing. And if you look at army value as well, Terran's ahead there. He's just ahead in every measure. You can see that he's up by 40 food. If you're a Protoss and you're trying to make a comeback, pretty much every Protoss comeback against Terran comes down to two things. One is Dark Templar, but if the Terran's very far ahead at this level, they're going to expect Dark Templar. They're going to have a lot of scans. It's hard to make a huge comeback with Dark Templar. Early on, maybe it can work, but at this point in the game, especially if you already have the Templar Archives, by far the best way to make that comeback is go for High Templar. Reason why is it's 2 food, 150 gas for each of this High Templar. Once you have Psystorm, 1 or 2 Psystorms can instantly turn the game around. It's an amazing way to make that comeback. So if you're ever behind in PvT, always go straight for High Templar. Psystorms are your best friend in trying to make that comeback. As a Terran player, if you're ahead, this is what's important here. You have to recognize how you're ahead, right? So if you take a look at the current state of the game, a Terran player is ahead by 2 metrics, right? Metric number 1, Terran is ahead by having a bigger army size, right? I mean, he's up by 50 food. 10 of that food is in units, but 40 of that food is in army. Now, some of that food is in rally units, some of it's units being produced, but a lot of it is just on the field is a much bigger army. And what that means is that you can use that army to make sure you keep your economic advantage, because he's also ahead in economy right now, right? 10 workers, 3 bases, Protoss has no third base. If you sit back and do nothing, what happens? Protoss takes a third base, they catch up on economy, and eventually they're going to catch up on army too, right? Eventually you're both going to hit max, and then who knows what's going to happen. So you have current economic advantage, you have a military advantage. You want to use that military advantage to maintain your economic advantage. Which means keep your army together. If your army's together, your opponent isn't going to be strong enough to deal with it, and then just deny their base. Hit their base, just stay a base up, kill the base, back away, continue teching, continue upgrading, right? So you maintain the army advantage. Use your army advantage to maintain your economic advantage. So you see that right now he's going for the third base, and of course, top doesn't really have too much. I mean, he actually has enough that he might be able to beat this because it's hurt, the medevacs are low in energy, and so much of his army, Terran army, is being rallied across the map, right? Or it's hanging out back here. But he still has more mobility. Now, the one thing you don't want to do with Terran, or in any matchup, if you're significantly ahead, I would highly recommend not doing fancy drop play, right? Now, think about what a drop can accomplish. It can do a couple things. One is you catch your opponent off guard, you get a lot of damage done, you force him to make stack defense. There's a lot of cool stuff that can happen from a drop, right? Maybe you kill the probes here, right? But what else can happen? They can defend the drop, right? So it's frozen overcharging. His focus at that medevac down as soon as he wants. Defending drop, you're going to kill almost nothing unless it's properly microed. And you're giving away 10 food for nothing, right? Because you gave away 10 food, now all of a sudden your army's weaker and you got to retreat, and now you're losing even more food in the rally point, right? So drops can be amazing. You can do insane amounts of damage to the drop. You can get in league with it. But drops can also be risky. You can bleed away units. You can donate food, and you can give up that military advantage by doing drops. So when you're ahead, there's no need to do these slightly risky drops. Now, I mean, technically, with Ignite Afterburners, if your opponent doesn't have Blink, drops technically aren't risky if you control them perfectly, right? Like, if, for example, he soft with an overcharge and medevac had more life, maybe could have gotten away, or like right here as well. But that relies on you perfectly multitasking, right? Perfectly making sure your rally units start running to the army, and making sure the drop is being controlled to the best of its ability. And the thing is if you're ahead, you don't need to have to rely on this perfect multitasking, right? And if you don't have that perfect multitasking, what happens? Well, your drop is just 40 food of all these medevacs and units that aren't going to really do anything significant. Meanwhile, your army is much weaker on the defensive side, so you can lose there as well. So when you're ahead, if you do a lot of crazy drop play, you can sometimes fall behind. Drops are a double-edged sword. If you're behind, or if you're even, they can give you a lead or catch you back up in the game. But if you're ahead, they can also result in situations like this. You lost too many units, your army's now too weak, and you can't stop them in the actual direct engagement, which is what you're relying on, right? So from here on out, the comeback from Protoss, use Psystorm. If you're ahead from Terran, keep your army together. Keep the 9 to 3rd base with your army superiority, right? Or back up, regroup to make sure you actually get that army superiority, and you're not stuck in a situation where you spend a lot of resources doing drop play. Yes, it looks cool, but at the end of the game, all this food here that you're, all the supply, that you're using in the drop play, you're not having it where it really matters. The most important aspect is always the major engagement. So if you have a military advantage, use it to make sure you win those major engagements. And as a Protoss opponent, if you know your player has more units, always use that Psystorm to try to catch back up. So at this point now, he's in, it's about an even game, right? He lost his advantage. If you look at this economy, he's a little bit behind the workers. He lost one of his orbitals, which isn't good. But he's got a 3rd orbit being rebuilt. It's still 3 base at 3 base. It's now a relatively even game. If you look at army value, it's fairly close as well, right? Protoss has a better army value here. 1,100 more gas versus 700 more minerals. Not to mention, in fact, there's so many units being rallied in. And now, this type of frontal attack, this is great if you're way ahead. But when you're behind, this is where all of a sudden you start winning play the drop play. Because if you're, behind and you try to engage in these major engagements, all of a sudden you're just going to fall more behind. So, everything is fast forward through. The game goes on for a little bit. Xenocider realizes he's lost his lead. He goes for a base area strategy. But Top just controls everything so well with Psystorms, defending all the multi-pronged attacks very well, and dealing with the drop play as well. And then 10 minutes later, Top ends up winning the game. So, a couple things to take away from this game. The most important thing to learn from it. 1, Chargelot Archon is an amazing composition opening PvT. You have to realize it's very strong in the open. So if Tyrion tries to push out, pressure you, go out, smash your army once you have Charge and Archons. If they don't have, if they have like a 200 food army with a lot of medevacs, that's not what Chargelot Archon's good. In the mid game, right when you get it though, 120, 130 food, you're going to crush almost any Terran army in the open with that Chargelot Archon composition. Crush your army, take map control. But don't fight in those choke points. Use Chargelot and Archons in the opening. As a Terran player, if you get a lead, don't do fancy drop play. Fancy play is a great way to outplay an opponent, to get an advantage. You watch Innovation. Innovation will get ahead by doing all this crazy drop play. But if you're already way ahead, keep it simple so there's less room for mistakes. Just focus on getting a lot of units, killing them in the major engagements when you're ahead in that army strength. And also as Protoss, remember, get Storm when you're behind. Right, so if you're a Protoss player, you're behind, go for a Psystorm. A couple Psystorms can turn a game around instantly. It's a great spell to try to make that comeback. This wraps up our first segment. We'll take a short break and be right on to our second segment.